Good morning, kindergartners! Welcome, 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 welcome to online kindergarten today. That kind of fell a little flat. Hello and welcome. Thank you so much for joining us, following along, and tuning in. I'm so glad that you're here, ready to listen and learn. It is reading time, so as always, we're going to start with our big book of knowledge, work on a skill, and then we will move it on to some stories. So, our curriculum is a little bit weird because sometimes it doesn't even have a story. It just has this really short, this is what I'm reading to you today, like a poem. So I don't know. I think we're gonna I'm gonna have this other story. It's really long. Can we listen to this? Can we? Really long book. It's gonna be hours. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see how it goes. Okay, but we are gonna work on some onset and rhyme again. So listen, I'm going to say the sounds of a word and you're gonna tell me the word, right? You're gonna blend the sounds to say the word, essentially. Okay? So ready? Listen. Ag. What is the word? Tag. That's right. Let's try some more. Net. Net. Very good. Ut. Hut. Ought. Pot. Ip. Lip. Lip. Right. Web. Web. Like Weber. Am I right? Say, I can blend sounds to make words. That was nice and easy. I'm so distracted because this is literally such a giant mess behind me. So at least at this point you know almost our whole classroom. Okay. Snap out of it. Wake up. Are we ready for these short poems? Or should we try this story and then we'll read the short poems? Let's do that. Okay, Curious George discovers the senses. So this week we're talking about our 5 senses, which is the sense of sight, the sense of smell, the sense of taste, the sense of hearing, and the sense of touch, right? Curious George discovers the senses. Let's see. Have you ever been curious about the 5 senses? You know, sight, sound, smell, taste, and touch? George is too. Come along as he discovers what they're all about. In the country, things moved at a slower pace, except for the man with the yellow helmet. He was training for a triathlon race on Saturday, and George was helping by keeping his time. While the man was training, the roof of George's house was being repaired. When George and the man got home, the roof repairman told them the hole is bigger than we thought. A lot of water got in. Uh-oh, that's not good. That's going to be a pretty big bill. The hole was right above their bedrooms. Until it was fixed, they had to move their beds downstairs into the living room. George was excited to sleep in the living room. It would be an adventure. Look, he's thrilled. But George discovered that there are also problems with sleeping somewhere new, especially after dark. In the dark, everything looked and sounded different. It made it hard for George to sleep. Then, something else made it hard for George to sleep. Bats! George woke up to the sound of bats screeching in the dark. I would say that they have a lot of concerns at their house. If they have a giant hole in the roof and bats, We gotta get this checked out. The bats woke the man up too. They must have come in through the hole in the roof, he said. The man tried to get the bats out of the house, but he tripped over something in the dark. I wish I were a bat, then I could get around in the dark too. George was curious. Like us, bats can't see very well in the dark. They use their ears instead of eyes, the man explained. Bats screech to find where they are. Their voices bounce off things so they know where things are, even if they can't see. They use their sense of sound to hear where they're going. Once the bats were out of the house, the man gave George a glass of milk to help him sleep. You remember the 5 senses, George. Sight, sound, taste, touch, and smell. We see with our eyes, we hear with our ears, we taste with our mouth, and we touch our hands and skin. We touch with our hands and skin and smell with our nose. Do you think you can sleep now, George? The man asked. George could. He went right back to sleep. Aww. But the man didn't. The next day, he looked really tired during the triathlon training. With the race only 2 days away, the man needed to get plenty of sleep to help keep his energy up. George hoped the man would sleep tonight, and he did, but George was still wide awake. He needed another glass of milk to help him fall asleep. George didn't want to wake the man up by turning on the light, so he tried to find his way to the kitchen in the dark, but he kept bumping into things. Then George remembered what the man had told him about the bats. George thought he could use his voice and his sense of hearing to find his way in the dark, too. He tried screeching like a bat, but he couldn't hear his voice bounce off anything. He tried a little louder and a little louder. "What are you doing?" cried the man. All that screeching had woken him up. And George was like, "I don't know." The next day, George felt awful. He'd kept the man up again. If only he had a way to quietly find his way to the kitchen in the dark. He couldn't see or hear his way. Then, George got an idea. While eating his breakfast, maybe he could taste his way to the kitchen. That's interesting. George put some oatmeal on the floor. He could use it to make a trail. "George!" the man cried out to stop him. Eating off the floor is never a good idea. If George couldn't use taste, sight, or sound, what senses were left? Yeah, I do not recommend that at home. Do not leave a trail of food. Your grown-ups are just going to be very upset. Oatmeal might not belong on the floor, definitely not, but it does belong in a curious monkey's tummy. George took a deep breath in. It smelled good. If he left the oatmeal out, would he be able to smell his way to the kitchen? Just then, the man came over. "Want some honey with your oatmeal?" he asked George. The honey was sticky, and that got George thinking. Maybe he could use touch. George spread a honey path along the floor. Oh my gosh, I do not recommend that either. If George felt the honey with his feet, he'd know if he was going the right way. He was so excited about his path, he could hardly wait to try it out. That is a concern. Do not do that at home. If you leave a trail of honey or syrup or something, your grown-ups are just going to be angry. I'm going to be very angry just thinking about it. Nobody wants all of that on the floor. Woo! Man with the yellow hat is going to lay into George, I think. That night, when George couldn't sleep, he used the honey path to help him find the kitchen. The honey was working. He was finding his way with touch. But now the honey was stuck to George's feet. It was hard to find the path because it felt like the honey was everywhere. "George, what are you doing?" the man asked. Oops, George had woken his friend up again. Come on, George, get it together. Get it together, you monkey friend. The next day, George decided to feel his way to the kitchen, using something soft, not sticky. George looked in his toy box. Maybe he could use his stuffed animals. George's soft path had to work because the man's race was tomorrow and he needed to get some sleep. George's stuffed animals would tell him where the furniture was, but he needed more soft things to lead him to the kitchen. So George rolled up some towels to make a path. So the man with the yellow hat is like trying to train for this triathlon. He's trying to get enough sleep, and George keeps waking him up in the middle of the night. George, you're not being very considerate. The man was so tired that he went to bed early. George didn't even have to wait until his bedtime to try his soft path out. Using his hands and feet, George worked his way to the kitchen, and he made it all the way without waking up his friend. That night, George used his path many, many times. Since he was so excited about the man's race tomorrow, George was the one who couldn't sleep. There he is, testing out his little path. How about just go to bed, George? That. The next morning, George was there to cheer the man on as he swam and rowed and ran his way to the finish line. But George missed the finish because all that walking around at night made a monkey very sleepy. Oh, and I think at the end, they are just like experiments. These are some fun things to do. Maybe I'll take a picture and post this so you guys can do it if you want. I mean, for like your science time or something, since they don't really make that many science lessons anymore. Something to think about. All right. So that was just our extra story. I know, it was pretty long. What are we at? 12 minutes? Almost 13? Okay, so we're going to read our 2 quick poems because our poems kind of go along with, I think they're the activities or the epic stories or something. This one is called Picnic Day by Catherine Corbett. See the feast beneath the trees. Smell the piney scented breeze. Feel the prickly tickly grass. Hear the ice cubes clink the glass. Taste the tangy lemonade. I love picnics in the shade. So let's see. They're using their sense of sight to see the feast. They're smelling the pine cone breeze. They're feeling the prickly tickly grass. They can hear the ice cubes clink in the glass. They can taste the lemonade. So they used all their senses at a picnic. Oh, that makes me so hungry. I love lemonade. That is my drink of choice. And then let's read this quick poem. 5 wonderful senses. My mouth can taste a yummy pie. My eyes can see a bird fly high. My nose can smell a blooming rose. My hands can reach and touch my toes. My ears can hear me when I say, I use 5 senses every day. Yay. Whew. All right. I hope you enjoyed our stories about 5 senses, our stories, our poems. You can go ahead and get started on your seesaw assignments and your epic stories. And yeah, I will see you in a little bit for some writing. All right. Don't forget to work hard. Don't give up. Do your best. Be kind. Make good choices. And I will see you soon. Bye.